Hi everybody, we welcome you into the first ever Amberley Village video information session. We are at the studios of ESP Media. I am Greg Waddell, and today we have with us Tom Muthing. He is the mayor of Amberley Village, and also with us from the Port of Greater Cincinnati Development Authority, Melissa Johnson. She is the Vice President of Industrial Development and Logistics. And first off, Melissa, tell us a little bit, what is exactly the Port Authority?
Hi, Greg. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, Mayor. We appreciate being a part of the Amberley Village community and this project. The Port of Greater Cincinnati Development Authority is a quasi-governmental economic development organization. We focus on repurposing real estate for job creation and tax-based valuation and revitalizing the overall community.
And as mentioned, we also have with us the mayor of Amberley Village, Tom Muthing, is with us. And Tom, why don't you explain Amberley Village's relationship with the Port Authority thus far?
Well, I think from Amberley Village perspective, we are delighted to be working with the Port Authority on this project. This project is critical to the village. And to have someone that we're working with in a true partnership type environment, and it's really taking on a role that probably would not have occurred if we didn't have something like the port performing this critical role of taking a site that is just, it is outdated, and
Sure.
To have someone come on and be willing to take on the role of demolition and so forth, that is something that I just think is critical for ongoing development of any region, and the Greater Cincinnati area is very lucky to have someone like the port.
And we should mention the location is 2100 Section Road in Amberley Village. Melissa, why did the Port Authority get involved with that location?
The Port Authority purchased this property in June of 2016. This is a part of the Port Authority's industrial revitalization strategy. Our board of directors undertook a strategic planning process which yielded foundational platforms for the Port Authority to invest in real estate, primarily industrial real estate, to meet demand to attract investment back to Hamilton County.
So as the site gets prepared for the project itself, what can we expect as that demolition gets ready, and what can we look for there?
The project, of course, the site is 56 acres, so the primary components of the site redevelopment include demolition, soil remediation, asbestos abatement, and a mass excavation and stormwater correction for infrastructure for the site.
And you mentioned the stormwater now, so how will that be different? What is currently there? I mean, how does that...
One of the impediments to the development of the property is the fact the existing stormwater infrastructure runs through the middle of the property under a parking lot, kind of middle of the acreage. So we actually will demolish that stormwater infrastructure and reroute it around the back perimeter of the site in more of a open, green, sustainable channel and daylighting method.
What company now will be involved with that project for the demolition?
The project demolition contract and site preparation contract was awarded to O'Rourke Wrecking in October of this year. They mobilized in the past few weeks and have started on the site clearance portion and the asbestos abatement.
Okay, so the start has happened now. Any kind of a schedule? I mean, what can we look for as things start to move along?
The demolition of the project should start within the next 3 to 4 weeks, so the structural demolition is imminent. The site preparation, the excavation for stormwater will happen after the first of the year. We're looking towards warmer or drier weather, so project completion is probably first or second quarter of 2017.
And you mentioned green a little bit earlier. Obviously, a lot of people like to know, can a lot of the demolition, the materials that are there, can that be recycled? Can it be reused?
We do our best. Certainly the contractor does employ particular methods in terms of salvaging either scrap metal or using particular elements of the project site. We try to incorporate as much as we can back into the project, but we do have means and methods employed by the contractor to be environmentally friendly. I think some of the wood chips from the tree clearance might be used for erosion control in a method there. So
okay, we'll get into the tree removal coming up here in a little bit. Sure, a lot of the village residents will be worried about, as the project's coming down, dust. How does that be contained? How can you kind of limit that, I suppose?
The contractor is required to maintain the entire environment of the property, including dust and noise and light and sound. So there are a number of things that they do keep track of. Relative to dust, they are required to keep the excavation of either the trees and or the building wetted, so they will use some kind of tanker or hydrant system to keep the property so it doesn't become airborne during demolition.
The mayor mentioned a little bit earlier too, Melissa, that it's an older building at 2100 Section Road. I'm sure folks are worried about asbestos in the building. Of course, that will be safely removed.
It absolutely will. Asbestos abatement comes prior to demolition, which is active and ongoing right now. The property and the structure itself is considered to be contained, and the asbestos removal has third-party oversight and is governed by the Ohio Department of Health.
Mayor, as this project goes on, I'm sure folks are also concerned about the quiet hours in the village. How will that work out?
The village code requires that there is not excessive noise from the hours of before 7 a.m. and after 11 p.m. The particular contractor on this this work is going beyond that and will be working primarily from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay.
And in fact, from 6 to 7 p.m. It really will be kind of more cleaning up the site for the day, and there really will not be much noise.
So now, will there be any work outside of those quiet hours done, though? I mean, that won't affect residents?
I mean, there won't be any work beyond 7 a.m. to the 7 p.m.
Okay,
Those are their work hours, and
That's it.
you know, our residents should not expect to hear any kind of work from or any kind of noise from that particular site beyond those hours.
Melissa, there's 21 acres on this site. What exactly, in addition to the building, cleaning up the site and clearing it out? What's involved with that?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the total property is 56 acres. One of the other impediments to development is that the back 20 acres of the site has been wooded and not available for development. One of the primary strategic goals of the Port Authority is to activate industrial property or former industrial property for economic reuse and capturing parcel sizes that are in excess of 20 acres. So we were trying to clear the site of existing wooded lot, the wooded 20 acres, to also incorporate those back acreage into future development.
And from Amberley Village perspective on this, again, this is, the port is coming in to try to maximize the economic value of this property. And this is something from an Amberley Village perspective that we're delighted that they are, you know, we don't know exactly where a potential ultimate user for the property will develop, but to create a site where they can maximize the value of that site for Amberley Village, we are just delighted.
I'm sure a lot of people want to know about the area between the property, 2100 Section Road, and then the homes located on Elbrook Avenue. What kind of a buffer zone will be in there? How much area will be there?
In the early site development process, you know, to the mayor's point, we had looked to maximize all of the acreage at the property, which included the east and western boundaries. And hearing some feedback from the residents, the 20-foot buffer or some of the existing tree line that sits in between some of the residential neighborhood and the existing property were very important. So Port Authority went back, evaluated a redesign, which was a part of the stormwater infrastructure element, and pushed that buffer 20 feet back from the property line to help serve as some kind of screening and hopefully some perhaps noise or, you know, barrier for the project as for the time period that the Port Authority ends the project.
And again, from Amberley's perspective, this again is a case of where it's so nice to be working with someone like the Port Authority. If this was just a typical third-party owner of that property, they might have met with residents, and residents might have said, you know, we don't want you to do it, but they would be moving forward. Whereas in this case, the port took the time to reconsider, had discussions with the village, and I think we've come up with a solution that is much better for residents. I think ultimately will be much better for the property, and really is I think is indicative of how we will work to create a situation that is good for the residents, but ultimately also good for the ultimate user of that property.
Well, that's good. It sounds like the partnership and working well together. With that in mind, then how did the Port Authority modify the storm channel from the original plan?
The original plan was an open storm channel, kind of in a daylighting method that ran the entire back east, west, and northern side of the property. In listening to the residents and understanding some of the concern, in that original plan there was a full excavation to the property line. We redesigned the channel to have an underground pipe system along that west and east side, which allowed us to maintain a portion of that buffer and not have to excavate that closely to the residential property line.
Talked about the partnership, Tom. How is the village now assisted with the port in kind of making this project move forward?
Well, at this point, the port is very much, focused on the demolition and so forth. But, I think Amberley's involvement is to work with the port, especially once the site is in a shovel-ready state,
Yeah, right.
to identify what type of company is the right party to come on there. And again, this is a great situation in that the village is able to work with a party that is very much interested in creating long-term economic value for the greater Cincinnati area and not just looking to make a quick buck on the property. And in fact, the port has come in and said, they're not interested in making a profit on this property. They're interested in focusing on the long-term economic value to the greater Cincinnati area. So, we have great alignment on this.
What about the tree allotment that was brought up in one of the public information sessions?
Yeah, again, we're focused on what we can do for our residents along Elbrook. We talked about, did it make sense to do something? And ultimately we determined that not only did it not make sense, but it really was something we could not do. You cannot, pick out 15 residents and say, we're going to give you a tree allotment. But again, I think we came to a reasonable solution. And, we will constantly be re-evaluating, is there more that we can do, especially once we identify the ultimate end user and we identify where the building is going to be and where the parking is going to be, where there will be lighting. This is something we will constantly be looking at.
The trees that were removed on the property now, I'm sure you've heard some of the noise, I don't want to call them complaints, but the noise coming from Pepsi. What can be done about that?
Well, again, our code requires that there is not excessive noise beyond 11 p.m. at night and prior to 7 a.m. We have, a number of industrial properties within the village along those railroad tracks along there, as well as there's industrial properties both in Cincinnati and in Sycamore Township along the railroad tracks. This has been, we've had many residents along there that have had industrial properties right next to their property, and it has worked very well. I think, whenever you have a big change like this, you go through a transition period, and we will be working with our residents to see if there's things that we can do. But it is industrial property that is along these residents, and I think there will be an adjustment period.
As the project moves along, Melissa, I'm sure folks are going to want updates on it. How can they stay, I guess, updated on some of the happenings in the different phases of the project?
Well, in our partnership with the village, we'll continue to hold community meetings and happy to do regular updates here with you
Sure.
and the mayor. We'll also be posting updates to our website, which is www.cincinnatiport.org. And happy to take phone calls or questions from residents or the community directly to our office.
So, and who would they talk? Would they contact
They
you
would
directly?
contact me, absolutely.
Okay, and your email address is mjohnson@cincinnatiport.org. mjohnson@cincinnatiport.org. We can have that on the screen for you as well. And I guess the most important part about all this, Mayor, and both of you can chime in on this, though, what does the redevelopment of 2100 Section Road mean for Amberley Village?
Well, 2100 Section Road was initially developed by the Gibson Greeting Card Company in the mid-50s and was by far the largest revenue generator for the village for over 40 years. And when Gibson Greeting Card Company closed in the late 90s, that really left a big hole in the revenues for the village. And for the last 20 years, we've been looking at what can we do on that property. There was a tenant on the property, and so it created a little bit of revenues, but nothing like the Gibson Greeting Card Company
Sure.
meant to the village. And so, this is where we were struggling as a village to say, how can we try to, generate something on that site? And we were fortunate that the port stepped in and is performing a very valuable role. So what we're very hopeful now is that important revenue generator that we've been looking
Right.
for the village will in fact be there. And again, there's this, we're going through a transition period, but it's an exciting transition period, and I can't say enough that we're delighted to be working with the port to really work through this transition.
Well, Mr. Mayor, appreciate your time today. Melissa Johnson from the Port of Greater Cincinnati Development Authority. Appreciate your time. And you'll be able to view this information session on our YouTube page at Amberley Village. Also, for updated information, check out the Twitter feed for Amberley Village. It's at Amberley Village.